Time for DC current path. Okay, so now we're going to do the DC current paths. I've switched to just the preamp portion of the circuit because we don't need to do this that many times to demonstrate it. It's useful when you do this to ideally do each active component in a different color. You could also do it on separate pages, but a different color is really useful. So if you need to go spend money, a couple bucks on a bunch of colored highlighters, it's definitely worthwhile. Again, the whole idea is to make the schematic visually more useful to you. So put lots of information on it. And each of these steps that we're doing should be simple on its own, but provide you a lot of information. So if you have integrated circuits, you won't be doing much here. But if you have any discrete circuits, whether they be transistors or tubes, this will be very useful to you. So the idea is to draw the DC current path for each active component. So here we have 3 active components. We're not going to do Q1 because it's not really a part of this circuit. We could do it if we wanted to, but I'm just going to do these 3. And we have positive voltage and ground here. So the DC current path is going to go from positive voltage to ground. I don't care about direction here. So you can draw electron flow, you can draw current flow, conventional current flow. Either one is fine. If you had a negative voltage, you might be drawing to that. So the current has to be able to go from a more positive to a more negative. That could be positive and ground, that could be positive and negative, that could be ground and negative, whatever the case might be. So first active component is Q2. So I'll do that with my orange highlighter. Start at positive voltage. We come down into the collector, to the emitter, and then to ground. And the path to ground, pretty easy path through 13 and 14, or 13 and R14, so we know that's true. Now, the base is part of the current path. It's a tiny part that we might draw there, but don't do it at this point. Certainly for vacuum tubes, the grid does not represent any real amount of current. There is a small amount on the base here, but don't draw it as part of this. And I'll show you why in a little bit. We just want this basic current path. So that's it. Now we want to make sure we look at all the other paths that are possible. So we have current path here into this base, but that's into a different transistor, so that's not going to be part of this trace. We have this direction, so we could go through R10, but there's a capacitor, so that blocks the DC current flow, so we can't go that way. We could go up here through R11 and go down here. But again, that's a base current flow, so we don't want to worry about that. We have this path through R15, goes down through here, comes over, oh, there's a cap, can't go that way. This way we can go, but there's a cap that way, and this goes back to a transistor, which leads to positive. So that's not a current path. So in this case, all we have is through R12, collector to emitter, R13 to 14 to ground. So that's the DC current path for Q2, and that's the entirety of it. And in this case, that didn't show us a whole lot, but it will in other cases. So let's do Q3 now in purple. And make sure you put a key on this so you know what each color is. It's pretty obvious, but in this case, because we're drawing through that. But in some of these cases, and even in this example, we'll see where those current paths intermingle a bit. And so it's good to have different colors and make sure you color code them. So now Q3, again, we start up at the positive voltage. So we go down through R18 into collector, through transistor to emitter, R19, and then R20 to ground. We can't go over to CA because it's a capacitor. But what about here? So we can go through here, up to R11, come down, can't go that way because of cap, can't go this way because of cap. If we go into this base, we know that current coming into the base goes to the emitter because there's all the current is at the emitter, most is the collector, but there's a little bit coming in. So that would go through this emitter and down these resistors. So that is another current path. So going through here, over, down, and down along here. So this is one reason for having multiple colors and doing this on the same page, because we can see that R13 and R14 have both the current flow through Q2 and part of the current flow through Q3. And if you remember when we looked at this, the subcircuits here, we said there's not an R1, R2 here biasing the base, but there's going to be a DC voltage here, and that will go to bias the base. And that makes it part of this current path. So again, these two colors are really useful. Okay, and then now I'm going to use yellow, which doesn't show up very well. We'll see. Hopefully you can see it. So for Q4, again, we come from positive voltage. Now it's a common collector, so there's no resistor there. Through collector to emitter, and then down. It can't go through the output because there's a cap there. So we're going to keep going down. So if we go through R21, C5, so we can't go that way. So R21 through R16, R15, and up, and down through R13 to 14 again. Now that might seem bizarre and really complex, but the current has to get to a more negative spot. And as DC, it can't go that way, can't go that way. The only path for it to possibly take is through here. So we see, oops, not that way. Really clearly then that R13 and 14 have current flow from all three transistors going through them. And it's really easy to see now that we've done this and that we traced it, but it wouldn't be so clear just looking at the schematic. And again, now that we've got this traced, and this is on a separate page than what I did the signal path. And I think that's important. You're trying to put everything on one page, you're going to have trouble. But having one copy that has this, another copy that has the signal path, that will really help for you. Now you notice I did have positive and negative voltages marked on both of these copies. That's a really useful thing to have on every copy you look at. But signal path, current paths, mingling on the same page will probably make it too complex. So that's it. That's all that there is to this step. Again, do that for every active component you have. If you have questions, please let me know. Thanks.